So it's the third week in January 2021. And yes, I know I am late with this podcast episode, but the weekend comes and fly by so quickly you just don't even know where the time goes. I mean, I'm normally releasing these podcast episodes on a Monday morning, but like I said, the weekend came by and I got caught up in all these different activities, and before you know it, it was time for recording, and I have no notes, I have no talking points, I have no headlines, and I'm stuck. So that's why I'm here on a Monday afternoon trying to record this podcast. And I'm guessing that this podcast episode now is going to be released on a Tuesday morning instead of a Monday morning. But folks, I promise to get better with these time releases of these episodes because I want to stick to my Monday morning podcast, but sometimes the weekend just can't be helped. And I'm here recording on a Monday afternoon. But I'll get better with timing as we go along. I mean, how much better could you possibly get as episode number 27? We've been doing this for 27 weeks now at least. But anyhow, February 2021, we should have, I'm guessing the year should more or less be settled along and we'll get timing better and everything should go all hunky-dory again. But let's see what happens. So I don't know where to even begin with all these different headlines that I have in front of me today. But wait, before we begin, let me start off by welcoming back everyone to the Viewpoint, the Brian Heeraman podcast. Well, this is episode number 27. Remember, folks, you can find this podcast episode on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Twitter, YouTube, and for our international friends, especially it's on Spotify for you guys. So, as I mentioned, I don't even know where to begin. I mean, there's so much issues to be dealt with this time around. The year hasn't changed much in 2021 hasn't been any different from the ending of 2020. I mean, the issues is not as I guess it's not as potent as they were coming out at the end of 2020, but nonetheless issues and stuff needs to be dealt with. We need to talk about these issues as we go along. And also there is something that I talked about on my viewpoint talking point memo number 3, an issue that I raised that I want to do a little bit more in-depth analysis of. I don't find I gave it everything that what I wanted to say. I just probably want to talk about a couple more minutes. And going forward, I don't know, I normally do a summary at the beginning of each episode, but sometimes the summary takes so long that I want to stick to the timing of the podcast episodes and not being too much more than 25 minutes. I mean, I know most podcast episodes go longer than that, but I want to stick to that time period. I think that time period is pretty much where we need to be. So some episodes you might just find I just jump right into it and just start talking without providing the analysis. But I'll see how it goes as we get more into it. Where I do think that needs a bit of an introduction, I'll probably try and do those. But sometimes when he points us so much, I just cut it off because I don't want to waste time getting into too much of the details to take up from the actual analysis of the points. So let's begin. Let's jump right into it. So I think I know where I want to start this podcast episode. It's on a TV clip. No, actually, sorry. It was a newspaper clip from the Trinidad Guardian where I read about Ancil Roget, the oilfield workers trade union president, where he's basically asking the government for a meeting now. He's seeking to have a meeting with the government on the way forward, as it relates to sitting down and having a conversation about a mechanism to deal with workers in terms of their wage negotiation, privatization, utilities, and public service. Ancil Roget, this same guy who stood by and basically supervised the destruction of Petrotrin. There was no mass protest or anything the likes of that. No standing up for workers back then. But all of a sudden, he's back at it again. There's some people in this country who are what you call brazen face. This guy is the embodiment of brazen face. He sat by while the government was destroying Petrotrin and said little or nothing. And now because the oilfield workers trade union is now trying to get the contract or trying to get the government to sell the Petrotrin refinery to the oilfield workers trade union and their buddies. And for some strange reason it's taken long. We don't know why it's taken long. I mean, maybe it's because of the sanctions that they're afraid of from the US or whatever, but it's taken long. So he's now jumping on the back of workers once more to try and see if he can do some sort of subtle threats to the government to say, if you don't give us this refinery, then yeah, you know what? I'm going to come back out here and start to protest and start to make noise for TNTech workers and WASA workers and all these bunch of other workers who he cares little or nothing about. He has made no representation. If Ancil Roget cares about workers so much, over the last 5 years, he needs to tell the population, he needs to tell the workers how far has wage negotiation gone for all the outstanding players? How much wage negotiation has he and the Oilfield Workers Trade Union successfully negotiated since 2015 to now? He can't do that. But he's back at it again, That's just the nature of it. As I recall, in 2015, when this government came into office for the first incarnation, $15 million was given to unions, and that kept them quiet for the 5 years going forward. So now he's back again trying to get the refinery. But the population knows, the folks out there, they know better. They see what's going on. They see when Ancil Roget gets a voice and when he loses his voice. This attempt to send a message to the government on the backs of workers, it's not going to go down well. The people out there get it, Ancil Roget. They know what you're up to. But moving on to another point. I saw the former Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago president, Mr. Sina Jairam, talking about there are too many lawyers in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know where these people just get off from by saying that there are too many X, Y, and Z type of employees in Trinidad and Tobago. This is a free country as far as I know. If parents can afford to send their children to law school and they want to become lawyers, and so be it. Now, in terms of whether there's a demand for it, that's a different issue. But as far as I believe people could go and study whatever they want. If they can get a job there after, then so be it. You're talking about there are so many lawyers in Trinidad and Tobago, and that may very well be true. But the government policy or the government, what they should be aiming to do is that to ensure there's sufficient labor supply to meet the needs where there's some sort of gap. I don't know, maybe there's a gap in engineering and therefore government should have its policy for to try and encourage people to study more. But if it is that parents want to send their children to lawyers because they grew up dreaming to be a lawyer, then so be it. I, for one thing, have too many politicians trying to go, but I'm not going to tell anybody to stop being a politician. I mean, it's a free country. These people have made their backs on, their professions, and now they're trying to prevent others from joining into the same league. There may very well be too much lawyers, but they have too much of many things in Trinidad and Tobago. Politicians, for one example. Managers who seem to do nothing and have no idea how to manage. Nobody says nothing about it. I mean, just recently I read an article where they're saying that how lawyers and scholarship winners are driving taxis to make ends meet. But that's just the nature of what happens. I mean, if there's too much of a supply of one type of labor, then there's not going to be sufficient jobs in the market for everyone. But no one says not to go and study. No one tells anybody what they should study or what they shouldn't study. I mean, that's an individual decision. People make decisions based on how the market responds to it. And if the market right now is responding to lawyers, and people are going to study law. If there's mind to be making engineering, then obviously those who are capable of doing engineering, capable of doing managers, whatever the market dictates, people will study according to those rules. That's just how it is. What caught me, however, with regards to this whole lawyers driving taxi and scholarship when they're driving taxis to make ends meet, is how the Attorney General responded to this. Now, this all came to the limelight when there was a joint select committee on finance and legal affairs examining public officials on the subject of the ease of doing business and that kind of thing. In the end of the day, the Attorney General was questioned about it. I think it was the news who questioned him, and he said that how he was pitching his game at how he hired X amount of lawyers in this division and in legal affairs and in the Attorney General office, Solicitor State General office got so many employees, which is all fine and good. But how he ended is what bothered me. He said, if it is that people are not finding jobs as being lawyers, then as far as he's concerned, otherwise, and I want to quote him, otherwise, I don't think a taxi driver life is a bad life. Now, obviously, I'm not saying taxi drivers. I'm not trying to say that that's a bad life, but can you imagine a parent or a child going to school? How many years it takes to do law? What, 5 years to do law, and then having to drive taxi, and the attorney general saying after 5 years of study, taxi driver life is not a bad life. Well, if that's the case, then why he don't do go and drive taxi? Why he don't go and tell everyone who he knows who wants to be a lawyer to go and drive taxi? Is a statement that some of these politicians make that annoy the living crap out of the man on the street. I don't understand how we can make such a statement. But the attorney general, this law clerk, has the audacity to say these things. He has not won, he has not won a case to his name since being in office. And he would tell people out there that, you know what, taxi driver life, if you study law, is not a bad idea after all. Wow. So while the nation's law clerk continues to live in la la land, I see the opposition party is now calling for a motion of no confidence in the Minister of National Security. Now, honestly, I don't think anything is going to happen with this motion because, as you all know, the government has 22 seats and the opposition has 19 seats. All this is going to achieve is having a somewhat of a public debate in terms of who raised whatever issues. In my mind, the Minister of National Security should resign immediately. And he should not resign not now, but even way before. This is a man who has been caught lying not by one international ambassador, but by two international ambassadors. And his reasoning is less than anything believable for a 5 year old. The lies were so brazen. One can't even believe why the Prime Minister continues to keep him. He's like a laughing stock in the international community eyes, but he's still there. And as this is going on, the economy continues to sink. Asia Right Nature Center, for example, the latest victim to COVID-19 and to the economy collapsing. Well, more specifically COVID-19, because they depend on tourists, and since they're not tourist arrival, then they have no choice but to shut their doors. Now, they didn't give how many employees were affected, but nonetheless, people were affected. People lost their jobs. The trickling effect will continue with regards to when people lose their jobs. I don't know how or why. What is the light at the end of the tunnel for Trinidad and Tobago in terms of what's happening to our economy? I can't see nothing. Today I was reading where TNTech has owed $1.4 billion, $264 million from private customers, and close to $2 billion from the state. That's sorry, close to $1.2 billion from the state. That's how much money TNTech is being owed right now. And TNTech, on the other hand, is probably owing the National Gas Company $500 million. I mean, in these state companies, everything is just booked as accounts receivable. The state company owing me, yeah, we will get paid at some point in time. And in the meantime, nobody gets paid. But we continue the story. We continue as though nothing has happened. But they're not the only victims to what's taking place in the economy. Recently, you saw on I think it was the Sunday Express, article talking about how the health sector, in terms of the clinics and everything, is collapsing as a result of COVID-19. And the chairman of the NCRH is now talking about how he's so shocked about what's going on. But these are concerns that has been happening for so long, even before COVID-19. I don't understand how people get so they're shocked about what's taking place right now. It's ridiculous what's going on or what's continuing to take place in this country. And the excuse for everything is, you know what? It's COVID-19. We don't have a choice in what's taking place. We have to take precautions, and it's happening across the world. It's not just Trinidad and Tobago. Not just because something is happening across the world means to say that we have to copy what they are doing or continue what they're doing. We need to put measures in place that benefits our people. If it is that um, we have a parallel, well, let's say we have a parallel health system taking place that's catering for COVID-19, then what is happening to the next system? How is it still in chaos? How is it possible that we can have people complain about bad customer service and healthcare system is, I guess it goes hand in hand in Trinidad and Tobago, but still, we should always be seeking to improve what we're doing, and this is not good. This is not good for Trinidad and Tobago. We need to do better than this when it comes to our health system. I mean, recently you guys would have seen the Prime Minister, he got ill as well, another minister fell ill. I mean, at the end of the day, when they leave office, unless they have the money, they're gonna fall right back into the public healthcare system. Why not take care of it now while you have a chance, while you can make it better? So when, God forbid, your time comes that you may very well need to use the health system, it's going to be there, up and running and ready for you to use, efficient as you could possibly make it. It's not just a public institution for the man on the streets. These are facilities for everyone. Make it better while you have the chance. The opportunity is now. And speaking about now, can somebody please tell me what it is with CARICOM leaders? What is it about them that they seem to have this love for communist states? First it was Venezuela, and now all of a sudden we start hearing about how CARICOM is backing Cuba as it relates to United States sanctions and calling Cuba, a terrorist state. I just don't understand. It seems as though whenever there's a clamp down on communism, CARICOM jumps to the forefront as a savior, as the god to save all these leftist nations. I don't think CARICOM seems to understand what they're defending. Communism is a form of suppression against the majority of people for the interest of the minority of people. That is, in a sense, what communism is. That is, in a sense, what Cuba is doing. That is, in a sense, what Venezuela is doing. These people are not running away from their country for the fun of it. It's because communism is hell on earth. That's what it is. I don't understand why we continue to have our leaders supporting this type of style of governance in the Caribbean. It's embarrassing when you do these things. Now is the time whereby we should stand up as a nation and tell these leaders that, oh, you know what? Yes, capitalism, for all the bad that it has, isn't it? That it has in it, sorry. Communism is not even anywhere near in comparison to capitalism. The movement for social justice, they continue. And why do even people take them seriously? It's almost as if you now come out from A levels and you've read these textbooks about sociology and you say, oh my God, you read Marxism and how nice it's good to have socialism and it's good to have communism and the proletariat versus the ruling class people, and that's all that they have in their head, and they just come out backing everything. It's all textbook, like I've mentioned before, time and time again. Communism is the greatest idea on planet Earth. It just happens to be just that, an idea. There are no great communist nations in the world, none. You can't find any. Communism is just an idea, it's just an ideal. Why do the movement for social justice? Why does David Abdullah continue to support just an idea? I mean, the idea is always against the majority. But here we go, and they go along those lines of the United States government will never allow a communist nation to take foothold in its backyard. That's why they're having significant problems with Nicaragua, with Venezuela, with Cuba. Communism doesn't work. But we'll see how it transpires into 2021. Joe Biden is coming into office on January 20th. We'll see what happens. It's still such a sad day in my mind. What happened with the elections in America, where these five swing states, provided such fraudulent results. But it's gone. It's past now. January 20th, Joe Biden, he has his opportunity to take the country forward in the US. Let's see what he does. But having said that, as I mentioned before, in my talking point memo number 3, there was something that I wanted to deal with. So I spoke about all this violence taking place against women, all these men. Well, I shouldn't even call them men, they're more cowards. For the record, violence against women is not acceptable. It will never be acceptable. Violence against men by women is not acceptable either. But you have to wonder, where does it all come from? I mean, it seems as typical Trinidadians, people just get up one morning and, there's 2 or 3 domestic violence cases in the newspapers, and everybody comes up and say, hey, domestic violence, men need to do better and everybody's all up in arms. And I agree with them. We should always be up in arms, but not just because the cases come up in the papers and two or three people talk about it. We need to find the root cause of these domestic violence cases. And it's not just about poverty or about people losing jobs. Regardless of what happens, domestic violence is, like I said, is not acceptable. But in my mind, it goes beyond just the issues that I mentioned before in terms of poverty and, you know, people being illiterate in terms of how they behave and that kind of thing. I can't help but see that how young people are taking pattern from what they see in front of them. I spoke about in my talking point memo number 3, the Prime Minister's behavior and how he speaks about women. People don't understand, but children copy those things. It's not okay just to talk about domestic violence and say you're against it without calling out those who are at fault. For example, I've dealt with the Prime Minister and how he interacts with women and what he thinks that he see. I'm not going back there again, but I want to go and say that how there is something culturally wrong with how women is portrayed. It's almost like sex object. You listen to the music of certain type of music like um, dub and rap culture and some soca songs and the things that they say about women, about how they describe them, about what to do to them, and then you wonder how young people look at women as anything less than an object, as anything less than a human, as something just you know where the abuse comes from. If we are serious as a nation about stamping out domestic violence as much as you can, then we have to be serious about the things that we put up front for leadership role, the music that we raise above the bar. I mean, you listen to Cardi B music. I mean, is that something that you want your children to listen to? Is that how you want them to respect women? Is that where they're gonna get a respect for women from? It's all funny when they sing it and when they dance when they're small, but it's in their head. It's how they interact with people, is what they say. They take these things for real. I mean, you can't have your children listening to that kind of music and then expect them to respect women. How you interact with women as well. The things that you say about them. You use obscenities, those things. I mean, it's all part of their socialization as young. And I have a significant problem with when people trying just to come out because they have, they see two articles in the papers about domestic violence, a man do something to a woman do something to a man, and you want to talk about domestic violence, but you're not getting to the root cause of what causes domestic violence. It has to be just beyond the issue that you read in papers. It comes from somewhere. And I think to stop these domestic violence cases, these domestic violence abuses, we have to start from the very beginning. We have to know what we allow our children to listen to, what we allow, until their minds are fully well developed to understand right from wrong. We have to know what we are telling our kids. If we don't get to the root cause, if we don't stamp things out from the beginning, then we're just spinning top in mud. Now, I'm not calling for the banning of any type of music because I think, you know, adults know right from wrong and they pretty much have an understanding of what needs to be done. But I'm saying, in the early stages of children life, things have to be different. I mean, you can't carry your 12-year-old daughter to a fete. You can't do that. I mean, to me, what is the message you're sending? There should be some sort of restriction as it relates to how or when a child mind is properly well developed to understand right and wrong in these kind of things. Yes, there has to be some things that's in the remit for adults as compared to what's for kids. But anyway, I think I'm approaching my time right now. In the meantime, I can't wait for the debate to start about who's working for Carnival 2021. Are you guys going to work for Carnival Monday and Tuesday? I can hardly wait for when Kitchener song starts to play. Do ask me to work for Carnival. Anyway, I think I've touched on what I wanted to get on today, folks. So stay tuned for episode number 20, and thanks for tuning in. And remember to like and subscribe, and to share this podcast with your friends and family as well. Take care, folks, and be safe.